Good afternoon, everybody. Good to see so many on the call. We're now up to 100. Phenomenal. Welcome to the September 13, zones 33 and 34 and more monthly Zoomformation call. We have a full agenda today. So without further ado, I'm going to get straight into it. And we start on a bit of a low point. I'm going to ask past District Governor Art McQueen, who is the chair of the Naples Summit, to give us a very, very brief update. Art, please, over to you.
Always such gracious introductions, and I appreciate it, Peter. And Peter actually did give me some notification this month. He called me, I think, yesterday and asked me if I could do this. So it was better than this morning. So most fluid event I've ever had the privilege of being involved in as we continue to make changes, even after the printed program has gone to press, to make our event as awesome as possible, while at the same time being as safe as it can be for our attendees. COVID cases in Florida are trending down, and I'm sure a lot of you are watching that as you prepare to come and visit. Actually, now we have 65% of our state has received at least one dose of the vaccine. Hospitalizations are considerably down as well. We're 16 days off from our leadership training kickoff. We're 17 days, and we'll be in the midst of COL training. Emerging leaders will have joined us, and the PDG forum will be underway. Following leadership, emerging leaders, COL trainings, and the PDG forum on Thursday evening, we'll have our opening session, and that's the closest we will get to a dress-up night. Come with a jacket on that evening if you choose, and ladies, your finest wear. Then it's on to general sessions, great speakers, class dinners, breakouts, and a Scotch tasting hosted by PDG's Ron Napier and George Robertson Burnett, for which about 90 of you have signed up in an apparent attempt to prime the pump for our Saturday night party, which we're calling Naples stock for some. We couldn't get away with Woodstock in Naples, so it's Naples stock. Come dressed as you would have in the 60s and 70s. We have special appearances scheduled by ABBA, Sonny and Cher, and apparently Dan Soldier is going to join us now at this point, and we'll have to discuss that further. We've had some tremendous support from sponsors this year, and we've had to turn vendors away from our House of Friendship as we are full, and that included one who's already texted me on this call. Some of our sponsors paid for packages that included a Zoom session to further explain what they do, what they can offer for you, your Rotary clubs, your members. Please go to our website, naplesreunion.org, and sign up for one or more of the 4 Zoom sessions being offered. Please support the folks that support us. We have both a food packing event as well as a literacy project going. The literacy project will benefit a local area in District 6960, our host district. And you can find a list of the needed supplies on our website, again, naplesreunion.org, under Guadalupe Center School Supplies Project. Our pick, Marshall Butler, that's our Rotary Public Image Coordinator, Marshall Butler, and his production and marketing team are constantly updating the website, adding more info about the event, Naples, and the reunion in order to help you maximize your visit. You'll also find, because it's often asked, what to wear section on that website. Thanks to all of you. We'll have another great event. So looking forward to it. We're 2 weeks out. See you in Naples. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Art. Great update. This is going to be an awesome event. The hotel is a fabulous venue, perfect for our purposes. Naples, as you all know, is the most attractive town, city. Many of you have been there before. You attended the same institute 10 years ago when John Smarch was the director. I'm excited. The team has done a great job. So it's going to be a fabulous event, and I look forward to seeing you all in person. So thank you again, Art. So moving right along, we really are privileged this afternoon to have a presentation by Alex Palacios about the Global Partnership for Education. As you know, September is Basic Education and Literacy Month in the Rotary world. And we have 2 fabulous speakers lined up for you today. The first is Alex Palacios of the Global Partnership for Education. And the second is Carolyn Johnson, who's the chair of Rotary's Action Group for Basic Education Literacy, and you'll hear from Carolyn in a few minutes. Alex Palacios, until his recent retirement as Director for North America of the Private Sector and Foundations at the Global Partnership for Education. The GPE, it's hosted by the World Bank. It's the only multilateral partnership exclusively devoted to ensuring that all children in the world's poorest countries receive a quality basic education. Alex joined the Global Partnership in July 2013, and he has also served as the organization's Chief of Staff. He was the Director of External Relations in the Secretariat of Gavi, one of Rotary's polio partners. He was also worked previously as a longtime senior staff member at the United Nations Children's Fund, and he served as the Director of the US Fund Washington office. Prior to that, he was an Assistant General Counsel and Attorney Advisor for the US Peace Corps and the Inter-American Foundation. He also held a clerkship at the Office of the State's Attorney for Montgomery County. He's a graduate of the Washington College of Law at American University and Amherst College. Alex is a great speaker. It's a privilege to have you with us, Alex. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Peter. Really appreciate that. I always look forward to an opportunity to chat with Rotarians about this important subject. I might note that I think it was Carolyn who was with us in March, early March of 2020 in Washington, which was the last for a similar presentation. And it was the last public event before shutdown as a result of the virus. So it's good to see Carolyn again. We paired up before. I thought I'd start out by saying just a few things regarding the scale of the challenge before jumping into the global partnership's role itself. Just a few quick dot points. 60+ million children around the world of primary school age are not in school. They don't have access to schooling. This is pre-COVID numbers I'm providing you at the moment. 260+ million children, if you include lower and upper secondary, are not in school. And 250 million children or so who have been to school, some version of school, for at least 3 or 4 years, cannot read or do basic maths. So this speaks to the quality of the education that they are receiving and part of the challenge. Basically, slightly less than 23% of children 10 years of age in the partner countries that we support can read or, again, do the basic maths, recognize basic words on a sheet of paper. So there's a huge challenge both on the access front as well as on the quality front. In addition, we are working in many countries which, in addition to experiencing the COVID pandemic, which shut down virtually all schools for a good 14, 16, 18 months, depending on where you are sitting, we are looking at more than half of the countries that we are supporting suffering some kind of fragility or conflict or both. Afghanistan, Myanmar, Yemen, Haiti, a broad range of crises that have a huge impact on the availability of education and the quality of education in countries. And of course, the challenge to ensure that girls have the same access to education. Now, obviously, very much on the front pages of the news, but that's an issue actually in many countries beyond Afghanistan. It is a very fragmented sector. There are many, many players, small and large. And in the period before the existence of the Global Partnership for Education, founded in 2002, there wasn't really a mechanism that brought all the major players together to ensure at global as well as at country level a joined up, coordinated effort, confirmation of what national priorities are in so many countries, really critical as you bring together all the various constituencies and partners that countries developing countries themselves are at the center of that. That you have civil society, both in the North and in the South, represented. That you have teachers and teachers associations represented and having the platform to present their challenges and their concerns. And that you have the private sector and foundations, including organizations like Rotary, able to commit their strategic capabilities, their voice to the challenge. Absolutely critical. We'll talk a little bit about that in a second. So the role of GPE in global education, again, numerous players, including some of the organizations Peter mentioned. Obviously, UNICEF is a major player, United Nations Children's Fund, UNESCO, UNHCR, they're all present in these countries and all have a critical role to play. But the partnership is the convener, brings them all together. And we've been doing that for almost 20 years, working now in 76 plus countries. But it is, in addition to being a partnership and a convener, it is also a fund, because financial investment is critically needed, both from afar, from global sources, but also from domestic resources. More investment needs to be made on both fronts. And the model, the operating and financial model, needs to ensure that while we are providing resources from afar, that domestic support for education is also increasing, domestic financing. The amount of money mobilized now exceeds $11 billion over the last 18, 19 years. Just 6-7 weeks ago, we were able to, I think, pull off a very substantial success, even in the midst of the pandemic, with a London Global Education Summit that was co-chaired by Boris Johnson and President Kenyatta of Kenya. We had many partners contribute to the success of that effort. Obviously, sovereign donor governments were key to some of the huge support that was announced, but also the private sector and foundations. And I'm pleased to note that Rotary has been involved throughout our process in leading up to this summit. One of the most important things, I think, leading up to the summit that was made possible is that even the G7 in the weeks leading up to the summit recognized the importance of education as a global political priority. It's on the agenda, and that it isn't just about the sector itself, but that it is connected to climate change. It's connected to the COVID response and resilience, to peace and security. And of course, I think we all know, those of us who've had a chance to work on the Polio Plus program over the years, education and health are very closely linked together. So this money that we have been able to raise is going to support the implementation of compacts with all of these countries, several score, upon agreed priorities, but the priorities are primarily specifically developed at country level, and they are supported and will be monitored at country level. So what are we trying to achieve? Very simply, we want to be able to support and enable 175 million children to learn in these countries over the next 5 years. We want to reach 140 million children with trained teachers, which addresses the quality of education challenge that we face. And we want to get 88 million more children into school, 48 million of which are girls, over the next 5 years. We want to see that the success that we've been able to secure, particularly over the last decade, it takes years really for this progress to be made, continue and grow even further. 70% of the developing country partners of the Global Partnership for Education are reporting improved learning outcomes. We're getting better. The situation is improving. And scale is part of the challenge. We have to make sure that we are able to work at scale. More children have access to trained teachers, 39% today versus 25% in 2015. And more children are completing basic education. Primary completion rates are rising. More children, including girls, are transitioning from primary school into at least lower secondary school. The gender gap is narrowing. And domestic financing for education increased in 65% of our developing country partners. That's good news. Of course, one of the challenges associated with that is also that obviously 35%, slightly more than 1/3, are not increasing, and we need to work harder on that. The strategic partnership with Rotary, and I should note that my colleague Aparna Krishnamurthy is online as well. She's really the person who's driving the relationship, working with Mary Jo and others in Evanston and our partners in Kenya, is really around tapping into Rotarians' standing in their communities and their voice, their ability to serve as leaders at community and national level, to raise the priority for education, to demonstrate their support. It's one of the main pillars of the Rotary International Foundation, and simply their presence, their voice is going to have an impact and will help move the needle on so many different fronts. Initially, we are working in one of the four regions of Kenya, Turkana, but we're looking to expand beyond that, Nepal, Uganda, and hopefully other countries over the period ahead. Rotary has been very supportive of our Girls Education Awareness Program. We had Amanda Watkin in the UK participate at the very high level consultation and conference that we had with Baroness Sugg and others. That program is now being implemented, and we've had a number of very important commitments from numerous business partners about their using their advocacy, communications, marketing capacities to ensure that education and particularly girls' education messages are being incorporated into their outreach in several countries, 3 countries right now. So just to note in closing, I know time is limited. Rotary is a key partner. I've had the opportunity now for, I hate to say how many years, but decades of working with Rotary, first on global health and now on education. You have the capacity to change the world, and you're doing that every day. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alex. Great presentation, and interested to hear about the update on what is an important partnership for us all. I think we have time for just a couple of questions, if we can make them fairly quick. Anyone like to ask any questions at this point in time? I can't see the full screen, so if you're unmuted, just jump in and ask away. Okay.
Could you tell us the percentage of your funding that comes from the private sector versus the percentage that might come from the governmental sectors?
Yeah.
Thanks, Elizabeth.
Elizabeth, it's a good question. Our approach to engaging with the business community has been not to focus on their cash support, but to focus on tapping into the strategic capabilities of the business community around data, for example, tapping into their ability to help strengthen data systems, which are very, very weak in developing countries, tapping into their marketing, as you see from the capacities, as you see from the Girls' Education Awareness Program. With the private foundations, it's a different story. We are bringing in cash. We were able to mobilize about $100 million out of the $4+ billion that was generated at the Global Education Summit from private foundations. That includes some matching that a fund that we have that basically leverages money when money is pledged from the business community or foundations. And we hope that will grow, but that 100 million, just to note, represents a huge increase over what we were able to secure some years ago last time around. But just to say that it just as we have our, on this question of financing, we think that the most important contributions that the business community can make actually have to do with their capacities as opposed to their money.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Thanks, Alex, for that great answer. As I said, we are running a little tight on time. So if anyone has any additional questions for Alex, please place them in the chat or the questions box. And Alex, if you want to share your email address, then I'm sure you'll be able to answer offline. So thanks again for a tremendous presentation. And as I said, we have two great presenters today, two for the price of one. So it's now my great pleasure to introduce Carolyn Johnson. Carolyn is a member of the Yarmouth Rotary Club and served as a classmate of mine and Peter, as you may have heard earlier, in 2013-14, as district governor for District 7780. She's chair of the Basic Education and Literacy Rotary Action Group. BELRAG is an organization within Rotary that is committed to increasing awareness of severity and impact of illiteracy and increasing the awareness of Rotarians and to support them to implement education projects that strengthen the capacity of communities. She's an advisor to the Rotary Foundation's Water and Sanitation and Hygiene in Schools program, a very important one. She's the incoming vice chair of the Rotary Foundation's Bell Cadre of Technical Advisors. In 2008, she was honored to receive Rotary Service Above Self Award. She's an educator. She's been selected as one of Maine's distinguished educators. She has more than 30 years of experience as a teacher, administrator, and consultant. So please join me in welcoming another great speaker, Carolyn Johnson. Carolyn, over to you.
Thanks so much, Jeremy. And if someone could pull up the slides, that would be great. It's nice to reconnect with Alex and reconnect with so many friends from your two zones. It's lovely to be here and just nice to have Rotarians together. Are the slides ready? Okay. So I'm going to talk about BELRAG and literacy and different ways that clubs and districts and zones can be involved. Next slide, please. Alex did a great job on talking about the situation around the world. 1 in 9 adults around the world over the age of 15 lack basic literacy skills, and this is multifaceted. One, access to education, certainly. Girls having access to education. Working with children with disabilities and making sure that children with disabilities are able to go to school and participate fully. And then the other side of it is making sure that our schools and our classrooms are well equipped and our teachers are well trained. Next slide. I like to start with a description or a definition of literacy. The ability to read and write, certainly, and also the ability to use numbers and images and technology so that people can understand and communicate, so they can gain useful knowledge and solve problems. It's not just about reading letters or the words or the numbers off the page. It's really focusing on comprehension so that reading is meaningful and supportive throughout our lives. Next slide. The tragedy, and logically so, when children do not have access to education and children are not well educated, they grow up to be adults that struggle. In the United States, it's estimated that 36 million adults do not read or write or are not able to do basic math above the 3rd grade level. And recently I've seen these numbers as high as 42 million. That's a lot of adults who struggle with basic literacy. But sadly, though we have so many adults that do struggle with literacy, there are long waiting lines and very few organizations that support these adults and help them get their skills caught up. The impact of that, next slide. The impact of that is generational. Next slide. Reaching into their children. 72% of children who have parents with low literacy skills are going to repeat grades, may have trouble in school, are going to fall behind because their parents cannot support them in their schoolwork. 1 in 6 children, 1 in 6 students in the United States drop out of high school before completing that. Children are going to live in poverty, are much more likely to live in poverty when their parents have low literacy skills. And the cost to our country is an estimated $232 billion just in healthcare costs alone. Imagine going into a pharmacy, being given a prescription and all the warning symbols or warning signs and such, as you go to a pharmacy to get a prescription for your child and you can't read them and you can't remember what the pharmacist said. This is an issue for our country. Keep going. COVID is certainly taking a huge impact, and there are statistics there, but the upshot is we are very concerned about children losing skills over the course of being home or on Zoom calls with COVID. And the number of students graduating from high school or dropping out of high school is certainly going to increase. The children returning to school with their reading skills and literacy skills reduced is a huge concern for us, for the next generation, and certainly for Rotarians moving forward. Next slide. BELREG, Basic Education and Literacy Rotary Action Group, is focused on 4 things: helping increase the awareness of illiteracy and its impact, working with clubs and Rotarians to strengthen the capacity of all our communities to provide education, helping Rotarians increase the scale and effectiveness of their literacy programs, and working with organizations such as the Global Partnership for Education to establish partnerships, and working with other areas of focus. Next slide. This graphic shows global grants for last year, Rotary 2021. And you'll see that basic education and literacy grants amounted to about 8% of the total grants that were done last year by Rotarians. And this is a fairly consistent number since global grants have been implemented. Next slide. We do our global grants. We typically have around 175 to 185 global grants each year for BEL, and the number's around 12 million. Again, around 8 to 12%. I would posit not nearly enough basic education and literacy grants. If we can do more, we will be building the foundation definitely for improving water and sanitation, for peace and conflict, for healthcare, for maternal and child health. Foundationally, basic education and literacy is where we need to be putting our time and our effort. Next slide. I would look at home in starting this, and really we've been recommending to all Rotary clubs in the last year or so to take a look at home in their own communities. I've done a lot of work internationally, and certainly we need to be involved there as well. But every Rotary club should be involved in their own community. And the 3 areas that I would strongly recommend is in early childhood education, particularly working with programs that support parent literacy and parents understanding how to support their children. Working with out of school and underperforming youth. As I mentioned, this is going to be a critical issue going forward with more and more students dropping out of school because of COVID. And then working with adult literacy to make sure that parents and all adults have those strong literacy skills to be able to function and be participants in their community. Next slide. Some of the efforts and some of the areas where BELREG specifically is involved. We have a partnership with Save the Children, and we just received a $100,000 grant from Save the Children, where we can work with clubs in the United States to provide $5,000 to $10,000 grants for clubs to work within their own communities. This is for rural education and early literacy education. And these grant applications are open right now. Next slide. The second area, because it's Basic Education and Literacy Month, BELREG offers a $400 award for the best community literacy projects. Any club can apply, and the applications are due by the end of the month. And next one. The last area where we're working right now is making sure that all classrooms, and this is internationally, have access to good quality resources. We have a partnership with the Encyclopedia Britannica. They have produced a 1-volume, really high class, well created illustrated encyclopedia for clubs to make available to classrooms, to after-school projects, to other projects where they're working in education as a really great resource. Next. Education. Bell Rank does a monthly newsletter, which promotes lots of information. This one actually happens to highlight the Global Partnership for Education. We also, go ahead to the next slide. We also support clubs by providing resources when they're doing grants. We do a nice webinar series on different topics of education. We did one last year on girls' education, a second one on working in difficult times. Last slide. So in closing, really putting our time and our effort into literacy will help us change our communities and help us support the other area of focus where Rotarians work. Literacy is a great way to increase your impact, expand your reach, enhance your engagement in your community, and shows how we as Rotarians can increase our ability to adapt to the current circumstances. And with that, I'll close. And if you would like more information about ways that BellRag is involved with local clubs, I'd be happy to do that. We speak to clubs all the time, and if you're interested in any of those 3 grant projects, then I'd be happy to get more information to you. Thanks.
Carolyn, thank you so much for that amazing presentation and that update in terms of what BellRag's doing. We do have one question in the box for you there, and I'll just read it from Andy Lyman, some 6960. Carolyn, do we have any data on the amount of district grants that go towards literacy projects?
I do not, and that's a number I've been trying to find for a long, long time, but because district grants are managed by the districts, that number is very difficult to find.
Thanks very much indeed, Carolyn. I was incorrect earlier when I said we had 2 presentations, so 2 great presenters today. We in fact have 3, so I'm now going to pass back over to our director, Peter, who's going to introduce our 3rd and last presenter for the day. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeremy, and I'd like to give my thanks also to Carolyn. For as long as I can recall, Carolyn Johnson has been Miss Education in Rotary. She's a star, very passionate, great presentation, Carolyn. Thanks for all that you do. Please reach out. You provided so much information, but please reach out to Carolyn or go to the BellRag website for more information. She is a soul of information. So thank you very much. And now, as Jeremy mentioned, we have our final presentation from someone who also probably needs very little introduction. Patricia Schaefer is a Rotary Peace Fellow. She and Anna Patel are the 2 Rotary Peace Fellows who have been spearheading the Youth and Peace in Action, engaging young community peace builders for the last 18 months. This is according to Rotary International, this is the largest local community-based peace building organization, peace building initiative in Rotary's history. And given that Rotary's been going for just over 116 years, that really says a lot. So with a great deal of pleasure, I turn now to Patricia Schaefer for an update on the YPA initiative. Patricia.
All right, thanks so much, Peter. And I have to say, Jeremy, I chuckled when you said to everyone, ooh, 2 speakers for the price of 1, knowing that I was speaker number 3. So I hope you'll see this as a little bit of a bonus. And
your extra price, extra
no
value.
No worries, sir. And with this update, really listening to Alex and Carolyn and following all the good work that you do, I really saw, oh my goodness, this is like a magical intersection of topics. Because Alex, you really talked to us about scale and using multilateral partnerships to grow education and address huge gaps in terms of need. And Carolyn, I know all your work is innovative and it's all about innovations in learning and education, which is a pleasure to hear about in terms of your good work. And then I think this update about Youth and Peace in Action maybe is an intersection because I want to update you on the Youth and Peace in Action initiative. It's not lost upon me that this is Rotary's month designated to focus on education. So I'm focusing on education. And 7 days from now is International Peace Day. the annual day that the UN recognizes and Rotary is very active in recognizing with regard to the importance of peace. So hopefully this update kind of leverages what you've talked about in terms of multilateral partnerships and growing things to scale, innovations and learning, and this peace angle. I do want to say that for me, that sounds right too, since the original vision for Youth in Peace and Action was our own current Rotary International Director, Peter Kyle, for Zones 33-34. And he often talks about how this is an opportunity to show that Rotary can be an innovator in peace education and demonstrate that you can perhaps start to scale it. And as you start to scale it, bring on new partners that can actually make the idea of youth and peace education sustainable. So I'm very glad to update you 1 week away from International Peace Day. I also want to note that there are 3 kind of thematics that I have heard on a number of occasions, or I use on a number of occasions, that are about the intersection of peace and education. One comes from my friend Lubo Mijak, who is a former lost boy of Sudan who lives and works in South Sudan right now. And he says in the Dinka language, his native language, there's a very common and important saying: from education comes wisdom, from education comes wisdom, from wisdom comes peace. Similarly, 3 years ago, the International Alert put out the results of a perceptions poll with 100,000 people in 15 countries, in which they were asked, what should governments do to actually promote conflict resolution and peace building? And across these 100,000 people in 15 countries, 4 ideas rose to the top. One of them was to teach peace in schools. And then a big hero of mine is former Assistant Secretary General for the United Nations, Jan Eliasson, an amazing Swedish diplomat, who often said and gave beautiful speeches that you can't have peace without development, and you can't have development without peace. So when we think about education and peace intersecting, wow, around the world, and wow, in terms of a program like Youth in Peace and Action being tested out on our very own soil in the United States in zones 33-34. So what's happened? I want to tell you what's happened. We will put in the chat for you 2 videos. Some of you have seen one or the both of them. I want everybody to have a chance to look at them again at your leisure. One is 2.5 minutes, the other is 8.5 minutes, and they're about the 4 parts that make up Youth Peace and Action 21-22. Kicking off 7 days from now. International Peace Day, a virtual event, which you're going to hear many people are being invited to the launch of the first innovative interactive online peace platform with the support of Rotarians in zones 33-34. It provides content and experiences to primarily high school students in our zones. 3, how the program has peace projects that we've put in action by thousands of students in the spring. And lastly, a big celebration of all the results at the end of the year. So you'll have those 2 videos you can look at your leisure. We will also put in the chat for you a brochure, the latest brochure on the content and experiences of YPA. Sorry, so the big news is YPA goes live next week. YPA goes live on September 21st, the International Peace Day, or the International Day of Peace. Goes live is a really powerful phrase, because in a moment, I'm going to tell you how we're going live in so many ways after a year of work on this and 2.5 years of thinking and imagining on Peter's part in terms of a vision for Youth in Peace and Action. So here's how we're going live next week. After this, year of hard work and 2.5 years of thinking, there will be a virtual live stream, a series of virtual live streams actually on Tuesday, September 21st, and you can get information on them at ypakickoff.org. We'll be hosting these virtual live streams from Washington, D.C., from the offices of the Alliance for Peace Building, a really worthy partner and wonderful partner to Rotary. We'll be launching the online peace platform, which has interactive case studies, challenges, content, and community spaces next week. We will be launching a 21-day peace challenge in which young peace builders will actually say that our challenge is to listen to and amplify the voices of young people around peace and action. We're not challenging the young people, we're challenging ourselves to listen to their voices and amplify them. And I give my friend and colleague Flavio Bolog, who's the executive director of the other implementing organization, Outward Bound Peacebuilding, full credit for that fabulous phrase and idea. And two things that you need to know will be launching in this online peace platform. One is a program or course called My Peacebuilder Foundations, which is available to students so that they can take their courses interactively, a course interactively and online and asynchronously between mid-October and mid-December, and get certified as a peace builder, a certified young peace builder. The other is the launch of Guiding Young Peace Builders, which is a course that teachers, advisors, Rotarians, community sponsors can take to understand how to better come alongside and support young emerging peace builders. So quickly, everybody loves numbers, and a thing that we like to talk about in Rotary is impact being part of our strategy. So just to refresh everyone, I want you to know what the numbers look like now. So when the idea of Youth Peace and Action was first envisioned, 22 districts out of the 31 districts in zones 33, 34 signed up to fund in some way and support Youth and Peace and Action in some way. And at the time we said, what's a what if dream? And the what if dream was, well, what if all 22 of those districts participated in a really robust way? How many students could we reach? How many peace projects could be created? The answer on that what if dream was 35,000 students might receive in some way access to peace education, and 5,000 students in this coming year would actually be leading peace projects. What's happened in reality, this is my update for today, is we had 22 districts provide initial funding and support. 13 districts have been actively involved and assumed responsibility and impetus for the program moving forward. But because of this change and this emphasis on the online peace platform and all the bells and whistles that we've built into it, we can now say that as of today, we think about, well, we have 300 high schools and youth clubs signed up to participate. That represents 30,000 students who will have full access to the programming that I just mentioned to you. And we anticipate about 3,000 students actually leading peace projects. Now, I could give you all kinds of numbers about what that might mean in terms of how many students will be certified, how many teachers will be certified, how many Rotarians will be certified, and so on. I'm not going to be so bold as to forecast that at this moment in this presentation, but I do want you to know that our dashboard will be to be tracking exactly what you see on the screen. How will we know that this program was impactful? How will we know how many people participated? How will we know how many were certified? How will we know how much media exposure a Rotary and its support for peace and education achieved? And so I look forward to reporting back on that later in the fall. So there's just one last thing to do, and that's to give you a chance to join in. The live streams are taking place next Tuesday. There is a microsite, as I noted, called ypakickoff.org. You can actually register for specialized Rotary broadcasts of the live streams featuring youth peace builders, youth performances, the rollout of the online peace platform. We're going to drop in the chat for you a flyer about that you can widely distribute. We encourage you to watch, even have watch parties. We encourage you to join with us on social media and be part of the conversation. We're dropping a Zoom background in that you can use next Tuesday and all next week. That is basically a Youth and Peace and Action Zoom background. And I want to say that the participating districts won't let me close the door yet. Even though we have more than met the goal of how many high schools and youth service clubs should be involved, we're keeping the doors open until September 30, and they are continuing to recruit high schools and youth clubs because they want to. I got a lovely email this morning from 6980. They are over quota, they are over their goal, and somehow they think they're going to get me to squeeze in another 15 high schools in the next week. So go Rotary, go Youth and Peace in Action. Thanks.
Thank you, Patricia. What a great presentation. Lots of information, lot to absorb. This is a phenomenal project. I am so proud of what Patricia and the team have achieved. Looking forward very much to the presentations on Monday, International Day of Peace next week, and to the online platform. Thank you, Patricia, for all that you've done and for a superb presentation this afternoon. So, ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of our time. We try and limit these to 45 minutes. A lot of information today. An update, of course, from Art, presented with his usual passion and exuberance. Thank you, Art. Great presentation also from Alex Palacios on the Global Partnership for Education. Carolyn, thank you for all the information you provided. I hope people will take the time to go to the BELRAG website. There's a lot of stuff there. I have to say that the figures about education in the US were pretty startling and rather depressing. So anything that Rotary can do to support improving BEL activities in this part of the world, I think would be much appreciated. And finally, a great presentation, as I mentioned, from Patricia. So thank you all. The next Zoomformation call will be on October the 11th. We're going to miss October the 4th. That's the day after the summit. Many of you will still be coming home. We thought that if we met again when we've just met each other in person in Naples, that would be a bit much. So the next call will be on October the 11th. Mark that in your diary. And with that, as is customary, I invite Jeremy to join with me. Please mute yourselves, and Jeremy and I will recite the four-way test as we normally do. So of all the things we think, say, and do, is it the truth?
The truth.
Is it fair,
to all concerned?
Will it build goodwill and
better friendships?
Will it be beneficial,
to all concerned?
Thank you all. Have a great rest of the day. We'll see you in Naples. We'll see you at the International Day of Peace presentation at YPA, and we'll see you next month on another call. Thank you.